Hello and happy February. Yesterday marks 1 month since my husband Brad and I moved to France, and tomorrow will be 1 month exactly since we arrived in our new village. And so I thought I would provide a little update on how we're liking life in France, and what we've been up to, and whether or not there have been any surprises along the way. I'm Shannon, and if you are new to my channel or following me, welcome. I am, if I pronounce French names, probably going to butcher them, so in advance I apologize. We are working on learning French. That's one of the things that happened. We did just recently find and joined a French conversation group, and tomorrow we'll go back for the second time, and we're signing up for actual French classes, so we'll be learning online. Apparently Brad is learning at an A1 level. He's working on that. And I am, I guess, an advanced beginner, testing somewhere A2 to B1. So I'm going to do an A2 mastery course and trying to fill in some of the Swiss cheese holes. Mostly I have been learning up to this point via Duolingo and a couple other apps. I did have some base foundation from high school French, obviously many decades ago, as well as a quarter in college, also decades ago. So first, I just want to say that we love it here. It is everything we hoped for and then some. There have been some surprises and some challenges, yet I've read a lot that at about the 30-day mark, sometimes people start to feel homesick, and we are absolutely not feeling homesick. We might miss tacos or good salsa, but that's about it, and otherwise we definitely like it here. We have been going on a lot of walks. The Canal du Midi is about a half block from our house, and so we like to walk down to the canal and then walk along it. Right now, unfortunately, our canal path in the one direction we like the best is closed until mid-February, but we also walk along the village, around the village, or we walk in the other direction, or sometimes we've gotten our car and then we go to Valras Plage, which is about a 10 to 15 minute drive, or there's lots of other places that are within about 20 to 30 minutes that make a nice little pleasant drive. And then when we get there, we can walk around there as well. We have been enjoying going to markets. The one in our village is a little on the small side this time of year. One day we went, it was raining, and there were 2 vendors. Usually there's maybe 3 or 4. We also have gone to the one in the next town over, Serignan, which is a little bit bigger. And then one weekend we went to Pézenas, which is a wonderful village, and they have just an amazing market. We went there when we were in France for 2 months last year, and I imagine that periodically we will return to Pézenas. It, like Marseille, is a place that just kind of stole our hearts when we were here. And we just enjoy revisiting those locations. Since we moved here, I sleep better. My Fitbit tells me that I have been sleeping on average almost 2 hours more a night. I had been suffering from very bad insomnia pretty much every single night, waking up in the middle of the night and not going back to sleep. I won't say it's completely cured. That does still sometimes happen, but not as much. And then I sleep more peacefully, so I am sleeping more. I also, on average, am walking twice as many steps per day on average as I did last year when we were living in the US. So I'm thinking between sleeping better and eating better and walking more, that has to be good for our health. So some people have said, Shannon, you look younger since you got to France. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I feel better. And so that's definitely good. One of the things I did tackle this first month was going to the doctor. We do have health insurance that we had to purchase for our visa, and it's mostly, I mean, if we got really sick and had to go to the hospital, it's for that. But to go to the doctor here is about 30 euros, so I'm not too concerned. And after we've been here for 90 days, we will be eligible to apply for the carte vitale, which is the card that allows you to utilize the French healthcare system. And then that cost will go down. So going to the doctor was a little bit of an adventure. I had a prescription that was written by a US doctor that I needed to refill. And so a lot of people have said use Doctolib, and that is an app you can go on and you can search by specialty and location and also filter out if the doctors speak English. And so I got on Doctolib and I did my search, and most of the doctors that were local and spoke English were not taking new patients. I also sent an email to a nearby doctor and was told that they didn't have appointments for months. So I scheduled a teleconsultation with a doctor in a nearby town, and it said he spoke English. So I had the teleconsultation. He didn't really speak very much English, but finally I was able to communicate what I wanted, which was to have my prescription refilled. And I held it up to the screen so he could see what it was that I wanted, and he said okay, and he wrote the prescription and sent it to me via Doctolib. And I took that to the pharmacy and explained, and the pharmacist said no. And I don't quite understand why, but she absolutely was not going to fill it. I think maybe what he wrote was what it would have been in the US, and that might be why, and that was sort of a red flag. But anyways, she told me that I needed to go to a doctor who was down the street, and she walked me out and pointed to the door that I needed to go to. And so I walked in, and I'm just going to say that my doctor's office in the US was very, very different than this waiting room. It was completely just bare walls and chairs lined up against the wall. And there's not a receptionist, and there's not a welcome sign or directions, even in French. I mean, I could have taken a screenshot and Google translated if there was something like that. But there was a bell, and it said, osteopath, blah, blah, whatever the doctor was. And so I rang the bell. There were several people sitting in the waiting room, and they clearly looked like they spoke French. I didn't want to bother them, but I rang the bell and nothing happened. And then I rang the bell again, and then I, with Google Translate, asked, is this just for the osteopath? How do I see Dr. blah, blah, who was the doctor that I was supposed to try to get in to see? And they said, vous attendez ici, you wait here. And then the woman said that, she was première and elle est deuxième et il est troisième, and so obviously I was going to be the fourth. So I watched, and the doctor basically came to the door, motioned the person back, and then they followed him. So I waited my turn, and each person was about 10 to 15 minutes, so I waited a while, and I typed into Google Translate exactly what I wanted to say to the doctor so that I could explain my situation. And sure enough, he did not speak very much English. And so we mostly communicated via Google Translate. And I did have lab tests that I had brought with me from the US. And so I had them online, but I also had printed them out so I could show him. And, but they were, by now a few months old. So he told me before he would write me a prescription, he wanted me to go to get some lab tests, which seemed reasonable. And he told me where to go and where the lab was, and that I should go the next day at 7 a.m. And so we did. Brad went with me, and we were there at 7 a.m. and I got my blood drawn, got the lab test. They sent it to me 48 hours later. And then I went back to see the doctor once I had my blood tests. And I got there and for afternoon hours, and because they have morning hours, and then in France, most places take a 2-hour at least break in the middle of the day for lunch because everybody eats lunch in France. It's a thing. Meals are at specific times, and so if you don't eat between 12 and 2, you're not going to a restaurant, except for maybe a random place, but not most places. Anyways, back to my story. So, I go to the doctor's office and I see 2 people waiting outside. And are you open? And vous êtes ouvert or something? I ask, ouvert. And they say oui, and so I'm like, why are they standing outside? And I open the door, and all 16 or 18 of the chairs lining the walls are filled. And so I do some mental calculations. At 10 to 15 minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm not waiting. So the next morning, the office hours were going to be at 8:30. So I went at 8:15. And fortunately, the door was open and I was the second person in. And I was glad I was the second person in because when the first person went in, what I saw was it was not the same doctor. So there are 2 doctors. And so I had my lab results and my old lab results, but now I had to explain my situation all over again. And so the second doctor was actually nicer and kinder and easier to talk to, and he spoke a little bit more English. And so he did write my prescription and I got it filled. And so now I know, yes, you can do Doctolib, but apparently also if you want to go to the village doctor, you can just go. It's like a clinic. And then we went to apero dinatoire, which sounds like, I was like, what is that? So our landlords who live across the courtyard and garden from us, who are lovely, invited us to apero dinatoire. And so it's kind of a cross between happy hour with like really heavy hors d'oeuvres and a formal dinner. So I wasn't sure what to expect, but she had told me it was a lot of appetizers. So we got there and, well, back to my story. All the people that we met at apero dinatoire had gone to this doctor. So it is a thing. A lot of people go to this doctor. So you can make appointments on Doctolib, but you also can just walk in apparently to the village doctor. So good to know there's options. But anyways, back to apero dinatoire. I'm a little bit all over the map here. No, I haven't been drinking, but I will be in a little bit. And that's another story. So apero dinatoire, we get there and they've invited some of the neighbors for us to meet, which is so lovely. And some of them spoke English and French, and some of them spoke mostly English, and some of them spoke only French. And so the conversation was this wonderful flow of English and French. And one of the women there leads a conversation group here in the village with English-speaking people who want to learn French and French-speaking people who want to learn English. And it's at the florist, and they serve tea. And so we're going on Wednesday. So we have a conversation class tomorrow and then a conversation group on Wednesday. Anyways, apero dinatoire. So we get there, and I'm thinking it's heavy hors d'oeuvres, but they're serving champagne, and we're standing around the table, and on the table there's little dishes with nuts and olives and little grape tomatoes, and nice, but not what I would consider heavy hors d'oeuvres. And then they toast a welcome to us, which was really, really nice. And then after a while, after we stand around and we're drinking and whatnot, then we move into the dining room. And the dining room is beautifully set, and there are candles, and there are all of these dishes laid out. There's a ton of food, different varieties, but a lot of it, hors d'oeuvre type things, but certainly enough to make quite a meal of, and charcuterie and all kinds of things. And then after that, there is a cheese course, and there's dessert, and so it's like a dinner, but it's not a multi-course dinner. And we've now been invited to apero dinatoire by someone else too. That is the other thing I want to touch on, is that one of the things that was a little bit of a concern was, how would we meet people in France? Because people said, oh, well, do you have family? Do you have friends? And we did have a couple people who we had met previously, but we didn't have any friends, with the exception of one friend, but really not many. And I have to say that it has been pretty easy, maybe in part because our landlords have been so welcoming and have been kind of provided sort of an entree to us meeting other people. One of those women is lovely and has invited us to this, conversation group, and invited me to a book club. So I'm going to go to the book club. And when we were here previously for 2 months, we met some guys, and they invited us to their house for a Sunday lunch and introduced us to some of their friends, and so we've met them. And then we also have connected with some people online. And so we met a couple the other day via Instagram, and connected with them and had lunch, and that was nice. And then Brad ended up going to a concert with the husband to go see a band in which our former client plays. And apparently they're touring Europe right now, and they were going to be playing less than an hour. And it turned out that this guy who we just met is a big fan of this band. So they went to go see that. We also went to this Les Grands Buffet, which is really over the top. They have more cheeses apparently than anywhere else. It's been in the Guinness Book of World Records and written up in many different articles. Recently, I guess the BBC did a thing on them. But it has just tons of seafood and foie gras and wild boar and duck and more desserts than you can possibly imagine, including a crepe station and their own little ice cream parlor. And anyway, so we ended up having dinner with people who we didn't know before this started, who I would now consider friends. And that happened with a connection via Facebook. So if you are still in the US and thinking about moving to France, or if you're in France and you're having trouble meeting people, I know a lot of people kind of like diss Facebook and they're not that into it, but it has been a really, really great tool for us in terms of both researching the move and what to expect and how to prepare, and then also meeting people who are aligned with us and in the same area or planning to be in the same area. So there's a ton of different groups and, moving to, expats in, English speakers in, if you enter France and then your interest, there's different, whatever interests you have, there's probably a Facebook group for it. And if you're on one of the more general ones and you're not sure, type a question and say, hey, does anybody know of a resource for this? And you will probably get a bunch of people giving you many, many different answers. So that's a little bit about how the first month has been going for us. We are, we're still adjusting. We also, this is kind of interesting, had lunch recently with some friends and past clients of ours who are also considering a move to France. So a lot of people, given what's happening in the United States, are more seriously looking at opportunities elsewhere. Somebody asked me the other day, was it hard to make this move? And I think a lot of people think that it's harder than it is. For me, it would have been harder to stay in the United States, and certainly far more expensive. So I am going to do a future video on kind of our costs here, how they compare to our costs in the US. But I will say on a monthly basis, it costs us thousands of dollars less to live in France than it did in the United States. I'm also going to do a future video with a tour of our house. We're still kind of getting settled. We're waiting for our shipment still from the US. It left on December 5th, and it is supposed to be arriving in Belgium today. And then depending on how long customs takes and a bunch of different things, 2 to 3 days for this, 3 to 5 days for that, blah, blah, blah. We should have our shipment sometime within the next 2 to 4 weeks. So that's it. Anyways, if you've stayed with me this long, thanks for watching. Au revoir, and I'll be in tow until the next time.